All right. Bitcoin t-shirt on. Check. Show and tell / Paul's notes. Check. You can guess where we're going today. Today, I want to tell you about one big reason to buy Bitcoin now. Yeah, it is really something that I was looking through all the things that I could make a video about today. And I was I don't know, there's so much evidence, so much stuff going on, and there's so much FUD, fear, uncertainty, doubt about Bitcoin and crypto. This, folks, is the perfect environment for prices to rocket up. It would shock people. People would be, disbelieving, feel that it's undeserved. But that's often how bull markets and big price increases happen. All right. So before I get going, disclaimer, not investment advice. In other words, I've not considered what your financial position is or your risk or anything else. This is just investment opinion, information, engagement. Some of you find what I say and do hilarious. So for you, it's entertainment, and that's completely fine. Any references to past performance doesn't mean that you're guaranteed future results. The future is always uncertain. Nobody knows for sure. So mention that. Third, trading, investing, speculating, they carry risk of capital loss. In other words, you can lose money. And that's there in any financial operation, in finance and in markets and in money. Finally, win, lose, gain or loss, buy or sell. It's your money and it's your responsibility. All right. So this weekend, I was just doing my usual reading, and it's absolutely stunning and remarkable that there are all of these currency crises going on around the world. All right. I got to look at these notes because I didn't memorize them. All right. Nigeria, which I'm bringing the population up for a reason. You'll see why. With a population of 213 million, the government has essentially locked people out of their bank accounts. Yeah, that's actually happening. Pakistan, the country, is on the verge of bankruptcy, near bankruptcy. There's no money around. Sri Lanka actually declared bankruptcy earlier in 2022. Turkey, they've got inflation of, I don't know, 70, 80%. Egypt has similar issues. Argentina, Argentina cyclically goes through issues around inflation and currencies. Iran, they too have a serious issue with inflation and their currency. Iraq, their economy is a mess. Venezuela, Venezuela has been a long-term issue. Now, these are all countries with small to medium-sized populations, but you put it together, it's 864 million, which is about 10% of the world's population. But if you X out India and China, which is like 2 billion, represents 17% of the world's population. So all of these folks going through this currency macro uncertainty, and we're not talking like something small, like what we have dealt with in the US. And we're talking about cash shortages, inflation levels of 80%. In other words, prices are doubling, on a regular basis. Banks, essentially just taking people's money away, like in Lebanon, for example, where, you put your money in and you can't get it out. And so all of these things are also happening in some cases in countries where there are populations that are very young and very open to adopting new techniques, new ways of doing things, versus just simply seeing as the old solution as the only one. Nigeria, for example, 70% of their population is under 30. Yeah, 70%. Pakistan, 64%. Turkey, it's 48%. Iran, it's 60%. So you've got a large group of people, many of whom are just beginning to earn money and seeing the old ways of currency, old ways of government issued currency, and all of this being in crisis. And for the very first time in human history, we actually have an alternative that is not government issued, where the supply of it is actually limited. And while we in the US, or if you're in Europe, we see Bitcoin volatility as something that is so extreme. If you're going through 80% inflation, Bitcoin volatility is not that extreme. If you're going through a situation where you cannot get your money out of the bank after you've saved it, it's not that extreme. Or where your entire currency is just wiped out every 3 to 5 years, this is not that extreme. In other words, you can leave your money there. You can actually get it out. You can send it to who you want. You could convert it into other national currencies when you are ready. But it really gives you so many choices and alternatives that the old system simply no longer provides. All right, Dean, let's go ahead and put up a picture of the 2022 Global Crypto Adoption Index Top 20. And in that index, you will see that Pakistan is number 6, Nigeria is number 11, Turkey is number 12. And so crypto adoption is kind of like secretly going through its own bull market. In other words, you can go now to places like Turkey, you can go to places like Pakistan, and people are starting to quote prices in Bitcoin to people. And so that is driving Bitcoin as the medium of exchange. Now, it's not the majority. Still, the vast majority of people are still using the government issued currency, but there is now enough of a sort of undercurrent of people that are now actively using Bitcoin. And as they actively use it, well, it becomes very naturally a store of currency, because you need to keep some Bitcoin to be able to trade it, right? I mean, to be able to give people, to be able to facilitate all the transactions that you need to do. So it very naturally becomes a store of value. And then it also very naturally becomes a unit of account. By that, you mean like you start to record, well, how much of what do you have? You record it in terms of Bitcoin versus the old national currency. So there is this global undercurrent of adoption that is happening that really represents very persistent, frequent demand for Bitcoin. And this is happening as Bitcoin supply is at a record low in terms of long-term holders. So you can take a look at, Dean, you can put up the slide in showing this, that Bitcoin long-term holders now hold 78% of the supply, which is the highest level ever. Highest level ever. So bottom line, major crises going on around the world that most of us are not aware of, focused on, that is really driving Bitcoin adoption, crypto adoption around the world. And I say crypto adoption because there are places, for example, like Turkey, where Dogecoin is huge. There are some other countries where people are using Litecoin. So it's not just Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is, by function of it being so large, so liquid, getting the vast majority of sort of like this kind of activity. So with this adoption, you're starting to see demand that is small, because of course many of these countries, I mean, their GDPs, the total amount of money that is generated daily is not gigantic. Still, it is persistent. It's consistent, being that they're starting to use it in daily life. So it's there on a regular basis, and it's frequent because it's being used for everyday transactions, to transact for food and basic amenities. So this demand, as I mentioned, is coming right as the supply of Bitcoin is very, very tight. 78% of of Bitcoin is being held by long-term holders. That's a crazy high number, 78%. And then there is really the big sort of event which happens every 4 years for Bitcoin, which is that the Bitcoin halvening is coming. That's coming on March 7th, 2024. So it is about a year away. And so you may be thinking, well, what's the halvening? So Bitcoin halvening is a programmed supply, I said shift, but it's really a cut in Bitcoin supply that is provided to Bitcoin miners, where supply is going to be halved, in other words, chopped in half. And it's going to go from 6.25 to 3.125. So this is going to be, I believe it's the fourth or fifth halvening. The Genesis block, if you will, the original block was 50. Then we had a halvening that took it to 25. Then we had a halvening that took it to 12 and a half. We have a halvening that took it to 6.25. And now we've had this halvening. So we've got now persistent, regular, consistent, frequent demand that is really starting to take off as a result of all of these currency crises going on around the world. And then we are faced with 78% of long-term holders hoarding the Bitcoin. And then we've also got a supply shock, a planned, predicted supply shock that many people are dismissing and saying, well, Paul, hey, we had the halving in 2020. It was no big deal. The price is not that much higher. People made all these predictions. Yeah, that's all fine. But remember, we have global adoption going on. 10% of the world's population using it on a regular basis. In all likelihood, there's other countries. I mean, I didn't really go look at other countries, but there are other countries that are also suffering from this. I would estimate it's really closer to 15 or 20% of the world's population that is looking for an alternative. And Bitcoin is the only global, widely known, accepted, accessible alternative. Bottom line, there is way more demand than supply. Way more demand than supply that is true right now and going to be even more true in the future. Because as all of these countries with all of these young people start to get older, they are just going to start to think in Bitcoin, use Bitcoin everywhere, and it is going to become a de facto global currency that is accepted all around the world. And that means you will start to see people think of that idea. And what will happen? Well, people start to hoard more and more Bitcoin. And that means, in my judgment, my opinion, remember, this channel, investment opinion, not advice. Conditions are ripe for Bitcoin to hit 50K. I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to say June. Yeah, June. Because I mean, the intensity of what is going on in Nigeria, in Pakistan, in Turkey, yeah, I mean, it's telling you that, there's going to be this moment where the bridge is crossed, the chasm is crossed. And at that point, there's just, enough transactions happening that it just flips the market to where the demand supply balance is sort of permanently like now altered. And so I'll say June 2023 for Bitcoin 50K. Bitcoin 100K, I'll say by year end. And that's because once people start to see other people having success with Bitcoin, and having success, is a low bar in many of these countries. It means just being able to hold on to your money. It means being able to buy food and feed your family. Other people are going to join in. And with that, the demand will just start to rocket up, which then, of course, will ratchet up people's sort of desire to hoard the Bitcoin as they see prices moving higher and people's need to use Bitcoin. Tim Draper, as you might recall from a video that I made, says Bitcoin could hit 250,000 by June of this year. Well, hey, I'd love it if it happened, but I'll say 2024 for 250K. Kathy Wood very recently said that Bitcoin's going to hit 1 million. I forget the date she put out there, but I'll say, about 5 years. Yeah, Bitcoin at 1 million. Now, hey, even if it got to, I don't know, anything near these, everyone would be really thrilled. But what's the bottom line for this video? The underlying conditions are ripe for a massive surge in Bitcoin, in my opinion, in my judgment. And that is being driven by global events relating around currencies, relating around really what governments are doing with their banking system. And for the very first time in human history, we have an alternative, a global, easily accessible alternative, which is Bitcoin. And I believe the conditions are ripe for us to see the price of this asset rocket up, because there is going to be so much demand and it is going to be met with so little supply. And that, in my experience, in my judgment, is a recipe for a massive, huge price surge. All right, so if you like analysis like this, please check out atgdigital.media. This is my company. We have subscriptions beginning at $9.99. If you want to test us out, check out my Substack, link below in the description. And if none of that sounds good, well, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, come back again next week. This is Paul saying bye.